Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Jay Weidner, called by Wired magazine an authority on the Hermetic and alchemical traditions, and a conspiracy hunter. Jay, you know that's almost as bad as being called anti-Semitic these days. You know, conspiracy theorist.
Same thing, isn't it?
Now, you know, I want to bring up something because I wrote a book 40 years ago, and a short story 40 years ago that seems to keep coming true. Everything, a lot of the things that I envisioned keep happening in real life, and I talked about civilizations much older than what we're considered about it, that our history gives us. I got a feeling you kind of agree with that.
Oh, yeah, I can hardly believe that anyone thinks that we've only been around here for a few thousand years, not with the preponderance of evidence that have been found in the strata and the layers going down. I think the human race has been here on Earth for a long time. A fully developed human race has been here on Earth for at least 1 million years.
Well, one of those oddities are finding human footprints beside dinosaur tracks, but...
Oh, yeah, you find that. You find objects down. Miners have found objects down at levels of dirt which should be, 800,000 years ago, and yet there they are. Campfires have been found, logs that have been cut and serrated and burned in circular places with rocks in a circle, and these have been found. Carbon dated 900,000 years ago, but they just ignore all the evidence, and because they don't want to believe it. They want to believe that everything will happen through evolution, very gradually. There was no real catastrophes. Human race has just been here a little while, and all those stories that the people have of legends going back for hundreds of thousands of years, well, that's just folk stories, and none of it's really true. Well, I don't believe that. I believe that they actually are true. And that's the way I read history. I read history as if the people that are writing the books are actually telling me the truth. They're not lying. They're not making up fables. They're actually telling me exactly what's going on.
Well, there's accounts in the Bible, in ancient history, about what we call UFOs, flying saucers, or I call them Earth ships in my fiction books.
I call them unrecognized fascist observatories, and so I don't really believe that the UFOs are from other planets, although there may very well be extraterrestrials and other planets and everything. I just don't see why a UFO would fly all the way across from Andromeda to land here and tell us that we shouldn't pollute.
Well, I feel like I've got a little different view of things. All the ancient history, all the ancient pyramids, which they keep finding lots of more of, they're all located in prime dope growing regions. I think we were colonized by interstellar drug dealers. What do you think?
It gives a whole new meaning to being spaced out.
Well, here we're the garden planet. We're the Garden of Eden here. They, God gave us, cannabis,
Well, He gave us everything. Everything is here for us to use, and to outlaw a plant that God gave us is just about as sacrilegious of a thing you could do, as you might as well just deny the existence of God if you're going to outlaw God's creations. And so, yeah, I would.
Kind of a police state, isn't it? Isn't it a police state where somebody can walk up to you and say, "What do you got in your pocket, boy?"
Or, "What are you growing?" right? And now they've expanded their abilities to destroy our lives by passing that Food Safety Act last year, where they can actually come in and say, the FDA can come in and say that your garden is illegal because it was not planted under the auspices of what they think is right.
That's right. And now
this is all the
article,
same thing.
The article that I was drawn to, and you know, I'm not exactly, I think religions were created for controlling humanity, controlling the masses. And that don't mean I don't believe in God. I believe if you're omnipotent and omniscient and you're the only one of your kind, you got to be bored shitless. So what do you do? What do? You can do, you create us, you put a little bit of your divinity in us, your energy in us, you're the power that holds the atoms together, and suddenly we got a direct connection, and we don't really need the preachers or the churches, but then that's just my opinion.
Well, that's opinion that's been shared by many people through history, and in fact, the people who espouse that point of view have one thing in common. They all end up dead. And
they've only tried to kill me 3 times in the last 7 years.
Oh yeah, they don't like people to say that you do not need a middleman between you and the creative force. They want that middleman because that way, in case you get any funny ideas about things, they got to have that middleman in there to make sure that you're kept under wraps with what you're thinking. And so religions were created by the powers that be, who actually are quite mysterious. They're not who we think they are.
Yeah, that's the other. I said I believe that the church in 350, I believe, A.D., promoted Jesus to God because they didn't want men like you and I aspiring to be the kind of man he was and the kind of man he said we could be. He said, you can do everything I do and more.
Oh, yeah. It definitely, I believe that. I believe that Jesus was the leader of a rebellion, actually, against the forces of control, the controllers. And he paid the very, very severe price for that rebellion. And a lot of people who, if you examine the words of Jesus, you can see that he's telling them that the God that the people of his time were worshiping is not really the true God. And this was the heresy. And it wasn't the heresy that he said he was God. He actually never said he was God.
That's right.
But he did. He did say that what they were doing, their temples, their God, was not the one true God. And that was the heresy, because indeed he is not the one true God. He is in fact a false God. And he is a God who is not a God at all. He's just a man with a mask. He's the Wizard of Oz. He's trying to scare us and trying to do everything he can to convince us of his omnipotence. But really, if you examine the record, there's very little there that we would even want to identify with. He's jealous, he's fierce, he's a murderer, he's a racist, he goes in and destroys the cultures of other countries, he kills everybody, he forces everyone to join a centralized religion of which this force is in control, and this centralized religion is goes all the way back, and these are the forces that are not in our interests, and there may not even be fully human. I don't know if I don't think they're alien, but I don't know what they are, but they don't appear to be fully human.
Everybody over the internet, people talk about the reptilians. David Icke talks about the reptilians, and I really don't have that. I don't have too hard of a time believing that over 1 million years, reptiles couldn't evolve the same way the mammals did.
Oh, absolutely, and but I think it's a cousin race of ours. I think it's a race that is a cousins of ours who live here with us and have lived here with us since the beginning of time, and they they are advanced, more advanced than we are, and they're really quite callous and cruel. And we are their servants. We grow their food. We produce the things that they want. We think we're working for corporations, and we are working for corporations, and we're working for the governments, but there's this third force, this secret force, and that's the force that's actually in control. They created the banking systems. They created the politicians, the governments, the institutions, everything that we follow. And that's why we could never get cracked through the prison, because everything in the prison was designed by them to imprison us, not for anything else. And once you realize that, then you can see that this force doesn't want to kill us, not totally, but it wants us curtailed, it wants us stupid, and it wants us to be quiet slaves for it.
Now, some of the people here would say, well, that's a protocols of the elders of Zion. That's a Jewish plot. But you know, I just did an interview with Gordon Duff, and Gordon and I are saying the same things that you and I are. We're on the same level. We know what's happening. We know that they want us to be slaves, and we know it's done by the banking system. Then it's done by the media. Now, there's a lot of Jews in the media there. They're pretty happy about that. They're pretty proud of that. But I said, I don't have any problem believing that me and Gordon Duff's ancestors, or my ancestors and Gordon Duff's ancestors, might have walked across, and his ancestors went to Judaism, and my ancestors went to Christianity. Both of which are you know, moot points, really.
Well, they are. They are.
And wasn't Jesus the first rebel that conquered the problem, that solved the problem that we have today? How do you fight evil without becoming evil?
That's exactly right, and that is exactly it. And if you want to fight them, then you have to be willing to give up everything, and I mean everything. And once you decide that you're going to fight them, you will probably end up giving up everything, and that is the story of Jesus. And you can see that the anger and the cruelty surpass human imagination. And believe me, the more that we talk about the non-human characteristics of this conspiracy, the more danger we're in, but the more enlightened the human race gets.
You know, that's exactly what's happened to me. I mean, they took in one day I lost everything.
Oh yeah.
And and that one day stretched out into 4 months. 4 months in the hospital, $750,000 hospital bill for 3 broken ribs.
Oh yeah, the stories are everywhere. The conspiracy is so much deeper than we can ever even believe. You know, that 20 years ago, I said to myself, okay, if in 20 years, you know, you believe this stuff more than you believe it now, then that must mean it's true. But if in 20 years you believe this stuff less than you believe it now, then it's probably not true. Well, 20 years went by, and I believe it about 400 million times more. So you can draw your own conclusions on that one.
You know, now, I had asked a question. Why would God not want Adam and Eve to know the difference between good and evil? Because if you know the difference between good and evil, then you don't make a good slave, do you?
No, you know, it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So it's not just good and evil; it's knowledge. It's smartening up. It's thinking for yourself. This is what has been from the beginning This is the main myth of Western civilization, that you are not to eat the fruit of this tree. You are not to gain knowledge. This is why the Catholic Church outlawed reading and writing and learning how to do mathematics. This is why Europe fell into the Dark Ages. This is why, people talk about, the Jewish people and how advanced they are over other peoples. Well, one of the main reasons that occurred is because the Catholic Church outlawed reading and writing, where in the Jewish communities this was encouraged. And when the smartest Jewish kids would rise up, they would get married and have children. When the smartest Christian kids would rise up, they would have to become nuns and priests and not procreate. And so Europe became more and more stupid because of the actions of the Catholic Church. I was raised a Catholic, and my parents are Catholic, and I feel bad about having to say all these terrible things about something that a lot of people hold dear. But I'm just talking about the history of it. If you look at the history of it, they destroyed us as a people, and we're only now sort of starting to recover, and we may never recover from what the Church did to us for 2,000 years. And Islam is doing the same thing to its people right now. And it's this force, and this force created Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And it's not a good force. It is a pernicious force. It is a malevolent force. Look at its actions. Do not look at its words. Look at what it does. And if you see what it does, all you see is murder and rape and genocide and control. And that's the only result.
The Christians are just as guilty of that, and a lot of them can't help it. I mean, I volunteered for Vietnam. I didn't have to go. God didn't let me go. Something didn't let me go there. But this is the thing, and we have to understand. And now what they're trying to do, or what they're doing, is they are they're getting rid of Christianity. I'm not sure why. They're promoting Islam. I'm not sure why. And they are promoting a lot of New Age religions. And so it seems as if they're getting ready to change ships and start a new vehicle of control, because possibly the older vehicles of control are just not working anymore. People have started questioning the control of the church, and that kind of happened in the 60s. We were smoking that pot, man, and we stopped wars too, didn't we?
We did, and the thing is that the church is filled with pedophiles, and it always has been, and it's been well known among Catholics for years that priests were this way, and not all priests. There's good priests, I'm sure, but a lot of priests were. And when we say pedophiles, it's of a distinctly male variety. In other words, we don't have priests molesting young girls, and that should be noted because it's very important. And this pedophilia thing is a symptom of this non-human group. This non-human group, remember, they are human. They're partially human. They're cousins of ours. They like young children. They like to have sex with young children. And they're the ones who are in control of the media, as you said, and they're the ones who are bringing out Lady Gaga and Katy Perry and all these lady singers who are encouraging and sexing girls up at a young age. And I think we have to ask ourselves, why would we do this? Why would anyone want their little girl sexed up at a young age? And why are we allowing it? Even more important.
It's been happening throughout history, and we've got a lot more people. That goes pretty high. I mean, George Bush. I interviewed Kathy O'Brien, knew Kathy O'Brien personally, and her daughter was molested by Bush Sr.
Well, she was too.
She was too. Well, she was Dick Cheney's slave.
Well, I'll tell you something about Kathy O'Brien. I'll try to be as nice as I can here. Kathy O'Brien came out, as you probably know, years ago, and claimed that Dick Cheney had an unusually large member.
Yes.
Right? And everybody laughed and thought that was really funny. Well, if you Google Dick Cheney with the word big behind it, you'll find a picture of Dick Cheney at the Wisconsin State Fair in 2004. And the lump in his pants just happens to be visible in this photograph. And believe me, Kathy O'Brien is not exaggerating. I mean, this thing is unbelievable. And when I saw that, I knew. I saw that in 2004, still up on the web. A lot of people talking about it. I knew Kathy O'Brien was not lying. I knew she.
I knew her personally. The other interesting thing she said was she was allowed to do, and the reason George Bush was throwing up on that Japanese prime minister was Kathy was bringing him heroin.
Oh yeah, I actually heard
Bush and.
Oh yeah, I heard a story back in the old Bush days. A guy who was a guard for Air Force One. He actually worked at an air base, and he was assigned to guard Air Force One. And he was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, and Bush and Jim Baker were at a meeting at this air base. And all of a sudden, Jim Baker and George Bush come running out of the meeting and running up the stairs, and they go into Air Force One, and he's standing there guarding the bottom of the steps. And all of a sudden, he starts smelling marijuana coming down, the smell coming out of the jet. And then about 10 minutes later, they come out all bloodshot eyes, and go back into the meeting. I don't know. I heard that story.
My friend Terry Reed was with Barry Seal when they delivered cocaine to George and Jeb.
And Bill Clinton.
And Bill Clinton, yes.
Yeah.
I happened to got to meet Barry Seal briefly in Dallas.
Oh, really? One of my heroes. He was a great guy. He finally decided to tell the truth about everything, and then they killed him.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he was flying the cocaine up that was being brought in by Operation Watchtower. And I ran that story in my motorcycle magazine 25 years ago in Miami about George Bush, the Mossad and CIA smuggling the cocaine in, put out by Colonel Edward P. Catolo. That's all a part of my book, Mystery Babylon, now.
I remember it very well, the whole incident, yeah, and I read Terry Reed's book, and it was good stuff. I knew somebody was caught in the Clinton machine in Arkansas, and they got out, and they told me that, you messed with the Clinton machine, and you ended up in a ditch, pretty much. And he was scared to death.
I said, my career spans pissing off 4 presidents now.
Oh, good. That's always good. The more presidents you piss off, the better.
Let's talk about.
I'm doing my best to piss Obama off.
Tell me about the culling, because I just used that word in my article, and that's called Mike Harris Doc. But you say in the culling, you say that it's been in effect for 35 years, at least, possibly over 100 years.
Yeah, it's a slow process.
Right.
Basically, the culling is what farmers call it when they have to go out and, because their chickens have a disease and have to kill all their chickens, or their cows have caught something. And so culling is a mass killing, is what it means. And what they're doing here is they have set us up for what I call the culling, which will be the trimming of the human race from its current 7 billion down to around 500 million.
Yeah, written in stone, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stone that was built by Ted Turner, yes. And so we are in so this plan was started in the 70s with the oil shock, And that's where they hatched the plan. If you remember in the 70s with the first oil shocks caused by the Shah of Iran, everyone, there were long lines, and farmer prices skyrocketed because food is all based on oil prices, and everything in the United States kind of went sky high, and Nixon had to do price controls and blah blah blah. And when that happened, the Trilateral boys and all these guys, they began to realize that the countries that suffered the most in the oil shock were the Western countries: Canada, America, Europe, Argentina, Australia. And the countries that didn't suffer so much were the third world countries, because they weren't dependent on oil, so it didn't really matter to them what the price was. Well, they realized that if they could get everybody hooked on an oil-based agriculture, that then they could just control the food supply by the control of oil. And so the Rockefellers began financing something called the Green Revolution, which was anything but green. And they went out into the third world countries in India and everywhere, and they converted ancient farming practices that have been practiced for thousands of years into modern oil-based mass agriculture. And so India and China and everywhere on Earth, Africa, everybody switched. And now everybody, all the old subsistence farming methods are gone and forgotten, because that generation has died away now, and a whole new generation has been born which knows nothing about how to do these things without oil. Everything they know is through oil. Furthermore, there's another generation which is now coming into aging, the younger generation, which doesn't even know how to produce food at all. They have no idea how to raise chickens or milk a cow or do anything. That now we're in the perfect position. If you think about it, if you go into the ghettos here in the United States, inner cities, you will find zero people that know anything about how to grow their own food, how to produce anything for themselves, anything. And this is the perfect situation, because all they have to do now is raise the oil prices, which they are gradually, but soon there'll be oil shocks. And this is why we're not drilling in Alaska, why they're shutting down the refineries in Louisiana and everything, not because or why Obama has outlawed coal production. This is not for the environment. This is we are being surrounded. Every avenue of escape is being slowly and surely cut off. And we had better wake up, because there's only about 2 holes left in the fence for us to get out, and they're scrambling to close those even.
I've suggested that the fence they want to build going down there in Mexico is not to keep the illegals out, it's to keep us in.
You know, Ron Paul said that in that debate 2 weeks ago, and I just thought that was about the bravest thing I've ever heard a presidential candidate ever say. It's, is the whole illegal immigration problem a contrivance, so that, not that there isn't a problem, there is, a contrivance so that we can, fence ourselves in voluntarily?
Well,
here's the thing.
I think it's just a little bit different. The fence is just a sideline. We could stop illegal immigration if we wanted to.
Sure.
But the Border Patrol officers tell me that we can stop them. They won't let us.
They won't let you. Why wouldn't they do that?
Well,
why would they do that?
Hold on just a second here. Let me save that. And do it again. They won't let them stop the illegals. The CIA and the Mossad were behind the Operation Watchtower that brought all the cocaine into the country. Barry Shield flew it into from Albuquerque Air Force Base to a little place called Mena, Arkansas, where Bill Clinton protected it. And the same thing is happening now with the guns going down to Mexico by the BATF. The BATF is selling it to their partners down who took over the drug cartels. They kicked out the Medellin cartel and installed the Cali cartel.
That's
so
right.
We've got the intelligence agencies like the CIA and the Mossad bringing the cocaine into this country. The CIA's flying it into this country. They're not even smuggling it. They're putting it on the airbase and bringing it into the Air Force bases.
Oh, yeah. They have to be because there's too much. So it has to be coordinated.
And now it has a little side benefit. You know, as Ayn Rand said, the government has no control over honest citizens, so they have to make criminals out of us. And that's what the drug laws are about. Not only did they rip off and steal a multi-million-dollar crop, they increased the value of it hundreds of times by making it illegal. So they can, now we've got the government agencies bringing it in, selling it, installing the drug dealers in the ghettos among the Hispanics, and selling it to your kids, so your kids can provide fodder for the for-profit prison systems.
And
Did I get it right, Jay?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they don't want you to smoke pot. They want you to snort cocaine. They don't want you to smoke pot. They want you to do methadone. This is what they really want. And
how about the millions of people that are on pain medication, sleeping pills? I mean, I thought my grandmother was just old and feeble until I took one of her sleeping pills.
Exactly. The prescription drugs, the whole thing is all run by the same people, and there's absolutely no way in the world that these things are not completely contrived. That's what's going on here, is they have chosen drugs that they want us to take, and they've chosen drugs they don't want us to take, and that's what the whole message is. They don't want you to smoke pot. The reason they don't want you to smoke pot is because they did studies, the CIA did studies in the 50s in which they tried to find out what drugs make people more ready to be mind controlled, and what drugs actually stop you from being mind controlled. And they loved all these other drugs. They loved heroin, they loved methadone, they loved cocaine, they loved downers, uppers, they loved everything. But the one drug that they found where the mind control, the MK Ultra programming, actually did not work so well was marijuana.
That's what Kathy O'Brien told me as we smoked the joint. And I've been smoking most of my life, and I can't be hypnotized, Jay.
Yeah,
I can hypnotize you. I can hypnotize you. Can give me a subject. I can hypnotize them in 10 minutes.
But I can't be hypnotized either. And here's at one time, you know, here's the thing. They keep telling us that marijuana makes you stupid, right? Well, and actually there are some people that probably that does happen. I've seen it. I'm not sure why, but in some people it does have a bad reaction. I know that's true. But I was at a party once, a long time ago, and we were talking about UFOs. There were about 10 people, and everybody was smoking pot. And these are fairly big people, the famous people, and everybody's talking about UFOs. And I said, well, I don't believe that UFOs are aliens. I don't believe any of that. I don't see why I should. Fully expecting the entire party to come down on me because it was such a renegade position at the time, and it ended up that every single person in the party thought the same thing. And so there was a great deal of clarity in this room mentally that I was shocked by, and these people could not be fooled, and they were all potheads.
I said we stopped the war in the 60s, you know, and we were right in the 60s. We had the music in the 60s. People knew, but the whole movement got hijacked. That's what they did. They take over every movement. The Tea Party's taken over. I mean, you got Sarah Palin is a darling. She wants to go bomb Iran.
Yep. Oh, yeah, the Tea Party was actually an anti-interventionist Ron Paul movement, and now it's been hijacked by the Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin, Rick Perry wing, who are actually just the same old, Ain't nothing different about it. They may say something different, but when they get in there, we're going to be in 100 countries just like we are now. We're going to have millions of troops all over the world just like we are now, not minding our own business, sticking our nose in other people's business, trying to control everybody. And it's time to bring the troops home. It's time to get out of the wars. It's time. And dang it, folks, if Ron Paul doesn't do it, we're going to have to do it.
You know, over 8 years ago, before my accident, and maybe this is the result of my accident, I proposed a solution to everything I've been reporting on for 20 years. It was called Liberty Villages. And what I saw in my vision was low-cost housing, teepees, yurts, cabins, blow-up houses, whatever. You know, you can blow up a house and spray it with water and it turns into concrete now. And generating our own energy in small villages, I call them villages. So you got people working that tend the gardens, you grow organic food, and you generate your own energy from everything God gave us, the sun and the wind and the magnets. And then you don't need the government. You don't need the middlemen. You don't need the churches for nothing. You're back in touch with nature. It's a foundation. The self-sufficient family farm is the basis of every civilization. And why is the ninth plank on the Communist Manifesto corporate farms, regional planning? And now we got Obama even moving to that. He says the rural communities are got tremendous economic potential, so the federal government's got to move in.
Yeah, well, Che Guevara was quoted once saying that it was very sad because the family farmer supported us in our revolution and fed us when we were fighting the rebellion. And so it's very sad that the first thing that we have to do in our so-called revolution is get rid of the family farmer, go to make it ready for community farming, as he called it.
It was the family farms in Vietnam that helped kick our ass out, and we should have been kicked out. We had no business bombing the farmers. That's the first people we bombed, the farmers.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody realizes the Viet Cong weren't North Vietnamese that were somehow stuck in South Vietnam like everyone thinks. Viet Cong were farmers who've been kicked off their land by us and by the people that we supported in Saigon. And that's who the Viet Cong were. They were just indigenous rebels. They weren't communists. We made them communists by fighting them and bombing their farms. And, we... Maybe
you'd be the person to ask this. We're 9/11 was our false flag. That's the most, the biggest false flag operation in history. But who won the Cold War?
The New World Order. There was no Cold War. There was no Cold War. The Cold War was a complete fraud. The same people that were in control of the Soviet Union were in control of the United States. Were in control of China. There was no Cold War. It was a fraud. It was a gigantic research project with two branches doing the same kind of research. It was basically space, weapons, outer space, NASA, and a control of the weaponization of space. That was what the Cold War was about, to terrify us, to make sure that they could completely control our movements, and to have the threat of nuclear war over our heads, which of course never happened, right? And that's what's going on.
I think they're going to sacrifice 6 million Jews in Israel, blame it on the Iranians to take us into a nuclear war. I mean, we got all these weapons sitting around up there in Albuquerque, up in the mountain there, and the Monzanos, and we got all these nuclear weapons. The Russians got all these nuclear weapons. What the hell are they for? Who made all the money off of making those, and what are they doing just sitting around?
Well, that's the thing. That's what Ron Paul's trying to stop. It's out of control. The military-industrial complex is out of control. It's making useless weapon systems that will never be used. It's making things that will never happen. It's encouraging wars just to experiment with these things. the whole thing isn't being driven by any other interests but these corporate interests. It's crony capitalism, as he says, and every single president that's ever tried to curtail the military-industrial complex has ended up horizontal. And so we need to, realize that this is a serious thing, that Ron Paul needs our help. If you don't agree with him on a lot of stuff, that's fine, but on curtailing the military-industrial establishment, we have to do that. We have to come to grips with this is why we're in debt, this is why we're going broke, this is why we're going down, and we have to bring our troops home. It's time.
I just put this in from J.B. Campbell. He says, the U.S. Army is now the Red Army. The U.S. Army and the Red Army were military partners from 1941 to 1945, worked closely for another 3 years to slaughter millions of helpless Germans and Jew-wise Europeans until the lucrative Cold War was started. Suddenly, the partners became enemies. In a few decades, the Soviet had served its purpose in the war and was dissolved. America then became the communist monster with no counterbalance. And I said what Solzhenitsyn tried to communicate with us from the distant past could be summed up in these words of his. It would have been difficult to design a path out of communism worse than the one that has been followed. I said we're at that stage right now. We have to design a path out of and around the communist-style tyranny that even the common man can see forming before his eyes, a full-blown police state. The United States has more people in prison than any other country in the world, and the drug business fuels the prison industries. And that'll be up on my website shortly, folks. But
that's pretty close to being true, as far as I can tell. Yeah, that's what's going on. And Ayn Rand once said, you can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequences of reality. And we're about to find out what those consequences are, and we're not going to like it. And we have been set up since the late 80s, when the so-called Soviet Union fell, which I don't believe it ever rose, and I don't believe it ever fell. I believe the whole thing was just a big puppet state. And in the time since Perestroika, we have been invaded by the Russian mob. Our intelligence agencies have all been compromised. We've sold off all of our top technology to China, who's our chief enemy on Earth, and we owe them. They own our country. And I hate to tell you guys this, but there was a white paper written up 2 years ago by the Chinese military and presented to the Chinese Politburo, in which they said that the Native Americans were Asian descent. They come over the Bering Strait, the old theory goes, and therefore white Europeans stole America from Asians. In other words, this white paper was trying to create a reason. And what would that reason be? The reason would be to invade us. In that time, China has purchased all of the ports in Long Beach, San Diego, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, and they own the Panama Canal. Somebody tell me that they're not preparing an invasion, please.
And now they've got the economic zones coming in. And, in the first Homeland Security meeting, they said in case of a single outbreak of smallpox, a major atomic attack, earthquake on the New Madrid fault line, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them just won't follow orders. Oh, Colonel, are you talking about the National Guard? No, they're going to be busy in Iraq or Afghanistan or somewhere. No, we need a cheap source of well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops.
Where do you get those?
Would that be the UN Rapid Strike Force manned by Chinese? Is that why they're teaching Chinese to speak English?
Well, it may be. It's also what these mystery cities that are in China. In northern China, they have these cities. You can type them in on Google.
Yes, sir.
And see them. And what those are, I think, is that they think that there's going to be still a retaliation attack by still loyal Americans in the military, and I pray there are some still loyal Americans in the upper echelons of the U.S. military, and I think that they got these cities, and they're going to before China does their invasion, they're going to move most of the people out of Beijing and Shanghai and move them up into these empty cities, so that when we blast off our few remaining missiles, hopefully, they will hit nothing but empty cities. That's the plan. It seems kind of obvious.
We wouldn't be targeting them right now.
No, there would be no reason.
What do you see? What role do you see Israel playing? I mean, we've got the UN vote coming up for the Palestinians. You know, to the whole problem in Israel is the elite are hiding behind the Jewish people.
Yeah.
They forced them down there. They forced them into the Palestinians. All that would have to happen is for Palestinians and Jews to be treated equally, the Palestinian Jews and Christians, just like they're supposed to be here. I mean, I don't care what religion you are here. You can go stick your nose in the sand. I'll even try to keep Saint Bernard off of you. You know.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, you know, Israel's an unnatural country. You know, countries are started by people who move there. Move onto the land slowly, or they've lived there a long time, and then they know their neighbors, they've known their neighbors for a long time, and then eventually they form a country, and neighbors form countries, and this is how the evolution of these things happen. And, you know, there's disputes and everything. But Israel was mandated by the UN, and so it was just a country completely created in an unnatural way. And the other thing
I call it a safe house for international criminals.
Well, it is. I mean, and the thing is that it looks like they're going to abandon Israel, and so if it is a safe house for this mafia, which I think is a really good point, then I think we have to ask ourselves, well, why would this mafia abandon Israel now? Which I think they actually are, and the answer is because they don't need it anymore. They don't have any. They have no allegiance to anyone.
I have suggested that they will blow up. They will set off an atomic bomb in Jerusalem to kill 6 million. We got 6 million Jews in that area, and if they kill them, and we go into the nuclear war with Iran and
probably possible,
then they've accomplished and they've killed off. That they lowered the world's population to the 5 million they've written in stone.
I think you have a real good point, actually. And there's another interesting thing about this, which is I have an article on my website about it. There was a movie that came out in 2005 called Kingdom of Heaven, which was about the time that Saladin conquered Jerusalem in the 1300s. And it's a very good movie, actually, one of the better films that Hollywood's produced. But interestingly, in the movie, there's a scene where the hero, Orlando Bloom, is talking to his friar about Jerusalem. And you can go check this out or read my article. I have the picture. And right on Orlando Bloom's head is a very clearly etched in makeup the numbers 2012. And there's no doubt about it. This is a $150 million film. Mistakes like this just do not get made. And so I wondered. And then I found out later that the movie was financed by Saudi Arabia. And we know Saudis are right in with all of this. And so I'm thinking that they were trying to tell that this movie was made to set us up for this idea that Jerusalem's always falling, it's always being attacked, and the director or somebody, I guess the director, knew about all the real machinations of this thing, and he had his makeup artist put the numbers on the guy's head so that we would know. And it's very interesting.
Now, let's go back to earlier you made a statement about some kind of forces. I think you even have a name for this. somebody that some beings that exist in the background.
Yeah, where I get my information from is what I did was I do a lot of research, obviously, and I had started realizing about 15 years ago that pretty much any books that I read or anything that I read that was after the court of Constantine in 350 AD was completely controlled by either church or state, and it had been censored and rewritten, and I mean everything. And so I decided that the efficacy of that information was no longer valid, so I went back to sources that had not been spun by church or state. And I ended up, with a lot of interesting texts. And one of the most interesting texts that I ended up with was the Nag Hammadi texts, which were discovered in Egypt in 1945 in clay jars in a cave. And so I knew these were not, the church had not got their fingers on it, no kings had got their monkey prints on it. And so I decided that I would read these texts because they had not been messed with by anyone. They're 2,000 years old. And what these texts tell us is that there is a group here on this planet that the Nag Hammadis call the Archons, and the Archons seek to enslave the human race. And the people that told these stories, what's interesting about this, sounds like almost like a science fiction idea, 2,000-year-old science fiction story. But what's really interesting about this is that every time I would investigate a group that was preaching these ideas of this group called the Archons that invaded the human race and was taking us over, every time one of these groups would raise their head and start saying this, the authorities, whoever they were, it didn't matter, Catholic, Jewish, Islamic, came down and killed them all, every time. To the point where the religion that was preaching this philosophy, Gnosticism, was wiped off the face of the earth about 1,500 years ago. One of the biggest religions on earth is now gone, completely gone. And what does this religion believe? This religion believes that that Jehovah is a slave master, and he's not a god. He's a fake god. He's acting like he's God. And they believed in a God. They believed in what they call a one true God. And they believe that these archons can infect people. They can get inside people and change them. And archons are attracted to negative energies like fear and violence and rape and so this idea, I think, has a lot of credibility, and just by the fact
it sounds like you're just describing the people in charge of all the studios.
Exactly, they are. And I used to be in Hollywood. I used to be a Hollywood screenwriter, and I can tell you there's some seriously creepy stuff going on in Hollywood, and I was so glad to leave. I was a naive kid from the Midwest, and I spent 7 years there, and I hightailed it out of there as fast as I could when I started finding out what they were really doing in Hollywood. And but it's not just Hollywood, it's also Washington, it's also the United Nations, it's not just the head of the United States, it's the heads of almost every country.
I refer to what's happening now with the wars and the war in Vietnam and all that, is they're putting it on entertainment, they're filming it, they're getting off on it.
They do get off on it. They like it. They like what they like is war, killing, violence. But what they really like is sex, not sex for love, but just sex, just straight ahead, grotesque sex between every kinds of beings. They think that's really funny and entertaining and ha 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 and all that. And what they really hate, though, most of all, is they hate love, and they hate the love between a man and a woman more than anything else. It drives them crazy. Why would they hate the love between a man and a woman? Why would they want to do everything they can to destroy the union of man and woman? Because it weakens us. When men and women are not together and not living together and working together and loving each other, we are weakened as a race. And when you end up doing an analysis of everything that's going on, you can only end up in one place. There is some force that wants us on our knees, weak, cannot fight, can't think for ourselves, can't even think. And that's where we are right now. It's a really scary, dangerous situation.
We're being drugged down, we're being fed poisons, we're being sprayed. Chemtrails are, this is literally poisoning the soil and the water you're drinking. I've just got a film up on my website right down there. If you scroll down on the Blog TV, Free American site, you can see the test showing the concentration of aluminum way over what's good for you. So they're literally poisoning us right now, attacking our crops. Genetically modified crops, rats won't eat it, but it's okay for you and your kids to get it.
Yeah, and not to mention 3 nuclear meltdowns going on right now with wave after wave of radiation pouring over the United States right now as we're talking.
It's I've suggested that we may have been in what the Bible referred to as Armageddon for the last 100 years. The press just didn't tell us about it.
Yeah, I like to say Armageddon out of here.
170 million people killed by their own governments. Now, we're not even counting the wars.
No, I know. I'm surprised it's not higher, actually. Yeah,
now,
it's bad, man.
The only answer that I could come up with is restoring the self-sufficient family farms. If we get just little communities together, people working together to grow their own food, to generate their own energy, and to educate people around them, we can take back the family farms. You know,
oh yeah,
that's the problem.
Homeschooling, the homeschooling, family farms, community. That's the way to go. That's how we have to go. It's the only way we can go. Everyone should drop everything and do that right now. I really mean that.
I proposed
get out of the cities.
So, and then they tried to kill me. Right after that came out, my centerfold of my magazine, distributed nationally, then suddenly I was in an arranged accident.
They like to arrange these accidents. They're everywhere, going on all the time. Yeah.
Well, folks, you can get all of this by going to freeamerican.com. Now, you've got books up. We got links right there to your site.
Yeah. Yeah, go to my site, jweidner.com, or get my videos at sacredmysteries.com. Become self-sufficient, learn to think for yourself, and listen to this show every day.
I appreciate that, and we'll have this link up to the article, because the article I just wrote just goes right along with what you're saying, even to some of the language, the culling and all that.
Fantastic.
So and we got an answer here. We're putting together an event here. Hopefully we can attract about 1,000 people. We're going to get, we have the sheriffs speaking in the southern counties that are facing the illegal, and I think they're running the illegals in on us just like they ran the Jews in on the Christians in Russia from the beyond the pale.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah, could be.
60,000 Americans have been killed since 9/11 by illegal aliens. 40% of your prison population is illegal aliens.
Send them back. Why put them in prison?
Why take up the room in the prison? Go back to country.
Exactly. Send them back. I don't want to spend my money on them. Or execute them. I mean, I don't care. If they kill somebody, they should be executed.
That's right. Eye for an eye.
Sounds so proud.
All right.
Yep. All right.
I think
all right, Clay, thanks a lot.
Let me just check here. And, okay, where are we at here, guys? See here? Okay, we're out of time here. Jay, thanks for being.
Talk to you.
Bye-bye.